Hello? Anna.
Hello everybody, welcome back to Screenstars. I'm here today to bring you my review for the 2021 horror thriller Those Who Call. The film is written and directed by Anubis Lopez and it stars, and I hope I pronounced these correctly, Yolanda Rodriguez and Angie Sandoval. And it focuses on two sisters who are essentially travelling cross-country. They are trying to bond after the passing of their father. They've been a little bit estranged over the years. And while they are travelling, essentially they run out of fuel. Typically in like the, Texan backcountry sort of thing. And then whilst they run out of fuel, they essentially have to kind of head off through the woods to try and find help, things like that, which leads to some sinister discoveries in a sense that they may well not be alone, and they become increasingly concerned for their safety as time progresses on. And there may also be a distinct connection to the passing of their father, which seems like an incredible coincidence. Right. What are my thoughts on Those Who Call? Well, this is a low-budget independent film. Obviously, we cover a lot of these on the channel. And while I do think there are aspects of this film that are interesting and fairly decently presented, I think ultimately it does fail to deliver a captivating horror stroke thriller experience. And there's a lot of different reasons for that. I think the concept here, as a positive, is pretty good. Two sisters, break down in the middle of nowhere. I mean, it's a concept we've seen done time and time again, sort of thing, but it can be effective if done properly. Kind of lost in these woods, trying to survive, and then increasingly as time goes on, you discover, more and more sinister things going on. You see, things in the wood, like Blair Witchy type stuff going off in the woods, and you see posters of missing girls everywhere, and then they start seeing posters of themselves as missing. So it all becomes really unnerving and very, very frightening, and they become, more and more desperate in the situation that they're in. But unfortunately, it's also one of those films that offers very little other than that. Now, much of the screen time is shared basically by these two actresses playing sisters, Sandra and Anna. And if you want to spend the majority of a runtime of a film watching sisters squabble, then this is the film for you. I get it, the sisters. I get it, they're estranged. I get it, they're trying to reconnect after all this time. But for me, it just got tiresome listening to them argue consistently and constantly throughout the film about literally anything and everything. And that could be reality. If I was in that situation with my brother, maybe we'd be squabbling constantly. But I don't want to watch it. I don't want to watch someone squabble constantly, you know what I mean? And it felt like that's what I was doing. And it grated after a while, you know what I mean? This constant squabbling between these two sisters. And initially, when I first met them, I didn't like them. I didn't feel a connection between them as sisters. It almost felt like they'd just met. But in all fairness, as the film progressed, I did get that impression that, they were related. And it's one of those films where they become more convincing as the film goes on, I suppose, but not necessarily the performances. I don't think the performances by either actresses are poor. But at the same time, I don't necessarily think they were convincing either in some aspects, other than the constant niggling and arguing that was going on. And then we get to what I think will be the most diversive part of this film, and that is there is a big twist at the end. And obviously, I'm not going to spoil what it is, but it is so out of left field. It kind of frustrates and annoys in a lot of ways. I think if they had kind of smartly telegraphed it and gave us hints here and there of what was going to happen, I think it probably would have worked better. But for me, it just completely came out of nowhere, and it's like, that just doesn't make any sense to me at all. And then it's one of those films where you kind of pull on the thread, and you just kind of, it raises more questions than it answers. You're kind of like, well, how is this related to their father? How how did this happen? How did that happen? How have all these people gone missing and no one investigated it? I mean, the list goes on and on and on, sort of thing, to say nothing of the major twists that they present to us as well. Well, I wouldn't go as far as to say I deeply disliked this film, because I don't think that's true. I thought the concept and the idea was sound. There were moments in the film where it held my attention, but there were other moments where it grated and grinded on my patience in regards to the constant griping by the sisters. And the cult aspect of the film, it didn't focus on it nearly enough. We didn't get to know anything about who they were, what they were doing, why they were doing it. So again, it just becomes a frustration by the end, because it just doesn't explain itself well enough. And I think if a little bit more effort had been put into the writing in that aspect, I think it might have succeeded a little bit better. I don't think it would ever have been like a top quality film or anything like that, but I just think it would have benefited from a little bit more clarity in the writing, and the direction of some of the characters, and the motives as well, for some of the characters. And I know all that sounds very vague, but I'm really trying not to give away any spoilers and things like that. So there is a lot wrong with this film, but I kind of liked aspects of it, and I thought it was filmed particularly nicely at times as well, the shots of the woods and things like that. But ultimately, for the majority of this film, you're just watching two sisters argue and squabble and run through woods and fall over and things like that. And there's just not enough horror or tension in the film to kind of make it a recommendation. So I'm going to give this one a 4 out of 10. I admire the idea to some aspects, and the concept is good. The execution, unfortunately, let it down for me. So thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed this review. I'll be back with more reviews and content on the channel very, very soon.